very honored today to be with one of the exceptional leaders that we have in this country. Somebody I've known for many years, Punki Modise. Siswam, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, Lincoln. I'm also very excited to see you after so many years.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good to see you and it's good to be here.
Great stuff. Punki sits at the apex of one of the largest banks on the continent, the ABSA Group. She sits on the group leadership team, and she is the head of strategy and sustainability. When you were growing up as a young girl, did you ever dream you will be at the most senior levels of a large institution like ABSA?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It digs deep. To be quite honest, I never thought of that. I think, we're right in the midst of apartheid, if you think about it. And I think those kind of opportunities were not even in the most distant, sight for all of us, or many of us. So really, it's not something that I thought will happen at this juncture, sitting with you. Yeah.
Who were the early influences in your life when you grew up, and where did you grow up?
Yeah, I think in my early life, which is obviously mostly my neighbors, it was always good just to see, how much we used to, together as neighbors, just to make things happen. And I think to a large extent, those are the early influences in my life, to a point that, from where I sit at this point, the one thing that I always reflect on is this African saying that says, it takes a village to raise a child. So for me, that is something that resonates quite well with me, because my influences were mostly my neighbors, and I knew, at every given moment in time, I think where to go and seek help. So to a point that when I reflect on my own leadership now, one of the things that I think I do very well is to ask for help.
Yes.
And I've learned it from there. Yeah.
When young people listen to you as a very senior leader say you go and ask for help, others may say, doesn't that demean you? Doesn't that lower you? Because you're already senior. Why are you still asking for help? How do you respond to that?
No one person has answers to everything. The world is so big. There's so much wisdom. I think that sits everywhere, around us. And for me, I find it as a quick way of getting to the answers. And also, I think I honestly believe, that when you seek help, you get a more well thought out and rounded response, because you are just one individual and you think in a certain fashion. But when you get, another person's perspective, dealing in that multiple perspective space, and when you're dealing with various perspectives, you find that the solutions that you come with are actually well thought through and actually much more profound, relative to solutions that you would come with and bring on the table on your own.
There are some leaders who are extroverted, charismatic, and always seek to have the answer. One thing I like about the way you've responded is that I've always known you to have this deep humility, but strong conviction. And what do you say to people who are largely introverted but deep thinkers? Because sometimes people think that those people cannot rise to the top. But in reality, you've shown with your meteoric rise that you do it your way. You're not going to be a different Punki to try and get to the top. You are who you are. That's one of the things I've admired with you, is your authenticity and realism.
Yeah, I think, Lincoln, one thing that we must remember is that we are diverse as people. And, if you thrive in the diversity of people, then you find greater answers. So for me, I think I honestly believe that leadership starts from within. And given that leadership starts from within, which are different maybe from the next person and from the other person. And so it's about making sure that you maximize the gifts that you have, because at the end of the day, that's what makes you stronger. So in my mind, it's about just making the best of the gifts that you have as an individual.
And so you find it easier every day because you are yourself. You're not trying to reinvent yourself depending on audiences. You're always back to leading self and leaving self, right?
And that's what makes a difference, to be quite honest. You see, I find myself not to have stresses.
Yes.
What you see is what you get.
Yes.
And I also deal quite well, I think, with the kinds of people that are what you see. It's actually what you get from them. Because then the relationships becomes deeper, and the connection also becomes deeper. And when you've got deeper connections, there's meaning, that emerges, and purpose. So at the end of the day, when you're connecting at that level with people, then magic happens.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
The role you play now is head of strategy and sustainability. Can you just give a bit of color to what those two kind of competencies within the role? What is it that you kind of focus on for the group?
Yeah, so from a group point of view, I think, separating sustainability from strategy doesn't make sense.
Yes.
I'm a qualified chartered accountant.
Yes.
And adversity, we dealt a lot with the concept of the three bottom line.
Yes.
The three bottom line boils down to sustainability. You can't run a sustainable organization without taking care of the things that matter the most. And to a large extent, yes, profits are very important, but at the same time, I think you generate profits from people. So people become of paramount importance. So from that perspective, if I look at the two roles, for me, it makes sense. It makes sense, I think, to combine the two and make them one, because it helps us as an organization to ultimately drive the strategy in a sustainable way, so we can sustain it over multiple decades. Because if you think about it, Lincoln, these institutions have to sustain and outlive all of us, and sustainability, it's all about just making sure that the institution is sustained over a long period of time. And when you think strategy is more long range. It's about looking outward and thinking about what does it mean at this point in time, the view where the world is going. So you can't really separate the two concepts at the end of the day. So for me, I think it makes sense for us to really combine and drive the two elements together.
So I want to try and work on both those parts in just enriching the conversation. So if we just start on the strategy element, as we said, they are linked, but I'd like for the conversation to talk about the strategy piece. How does your role in helping the group and its strategy play a role with the board, with the executive team, your colleagues, and with the rest of the staff at ABSA? How does this strategy thing you are involved in driving kind of plays with these three constituencies?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So to your point, I think each constituency has got its own needs. From a strategy point of view. And my sense, therefore, is that if I look at the board, for example, the board is mostly concerned about, the future sustainability of the company. And so from my role's perspective, we help them, to see, what's coming down the line. So that's like the big thing that we do. And also we help them think about then, how does the organization make trade-offs within that, the choices ultimately, that they make. And then if you take it down, to an exco level, which is the next set of constituency. So from an exco point of view, it's all about how do we make the strategy work, and to a large extent, where we play, it's around then helping the organization to plan forward, but also to show them, where things are not playing out as planned. So you play more that independent role, and also always be on the lookout as to where are the gaps that maybe we are not effectively closing, and then helping the organization to close those gaps. And then as you go further down, like say to the next level of the organization, it's more about ensuring that they are implementing what they have said. So it's the execution, it's the delivery, it's all those nice words, that we use. But also it's about making sure that everyone understands that, for success to happen, we all have to be driving towards one common goal. So we define the goal, and then we ensure that that goal is effectively cascaded across the board. Obviously, there's targets.
Yes.
It's
always going to be targets.
It's always going to be targets.
And the thing about targets is that they never come down, eh?
No.
They're always going up.
One way.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, ABSA has gone through a lot of change, where after the, call it, separation from the Barclays environment, it had to chart a different course and redefine itself. What does that redefinition look like now? What does ABSA kind of want to project to the world?
Yeah, I think for me, first of all, the exciting prospect of it is that not many organizations have the opportunity to define their own strategy ground up. Most of the time, I think when we join organizations, the strategy is there, and we have to assimilate around, that strategy. So from an ABSA perspective, I think what was exciting as an opportunity was just to be part of that process of formulating the strategy ground up. And I think key to that is it provides you also a great opportunity to hear, what your stakeholders are saying to you, and then how you respond to those stakeholders. Because at the end of the day, you've got to be relevant to the stakeholders. So the exciting prospect for us as ABSA is to be that leading, Pan-African bank, and that's our North Star. And we're working very hard, towards getting there.
Young people watching someone like you at the very top of one of the largest institutions on the continent sit there and like, I want to get there because I want to make decisions. Do people at your level make a lot of decisions, or do you make less decisions the more senior you are?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. My sense is we make decisions every day, but we make very big decisions which have got generational impacts. So if you just take a step back, if a bank has to make a decision around core banking, that's a 30-year decision, so it's not a 1-year decision. And that's what makes it tricky. And you therefore have to make sure that you've got the right processes around you to help you to make that decision, because it's going to have impact over a number of generations. I think that's where the difference is, once you get to that senior leadership.
So to your point is, it's less about the number, it's the more consequential the decisions, the more senior you are.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. Now, part of what I've always kind of heard you speak about and live is this thing about talent, right? People, right? To make any strategy come alive, or to have people wanting to join your organization. Just talk to us about that issue, because a lot of leaders pay lip service to this people thing, right? They kind of think it's soft, but you're an accountant, right? But you've kind of always put the issue of people front and center in your orientation. Why? Because other people say, but that's a soft thing.
Yeah. Well, people is what makes the world tick.
Mm.
Without people, the world doesn't tick.
Mm.
So you always have to be thinking people in everything that you do. And I think bringing it home to the bank, people are the most important, asset that we have, because no bank will function without people. When you're in a service industry, people serve, other people. So you therefore have to make sure that you take care of those people in the right way. And taking care of the people in the right way, it's not just about maybe putting people in jobs, but it's also about thinking the context that you create around those people. Because if you create the right context and environment for people, they will thrive. And then organization will thrive on the back of that. But if people feel like they are surviving, the organization will also survive. So, how people feel, how you make people feel at the end of the day, determines, how the organization is going to show up. So it is therefore important as a leader to always be consciously aware of that. And then I think also we've got an obligation, from when you're a leader from a country point of view, to ensure that, we continue to develop talent. Because when we develop talent, I think as banks or as organizations, you're not just developing talent for yourself, you're also developing talent for the country.
Yes.
Because at some point in time, we have to take care of the greater society and ensure that society thrives, on the back of that. So that's why for me, people, talent, and talent development is something that is very important. And we always joke in the office about being the exporter of talent. It's actually not a bad thing, as long as we continue to export for the greater good of our country and our continent.
If we now come to sustainability, again, knowing they are interlinked, just thinking about ESG, and we maybe delve a bit on the E. Why is it important for a bank like ABSA to be investing in the E part of ESG? And what are some of the practical things that ABSA has to do or does or plans to do to make sure that it's fully invested in our future, the future of our environment, the future of our country, the future of indeed our society and our planet?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think our planet is under threat. We're facing an existential crisis. So, given that context, we have to play our part as a bank in terms of solving some of those greater planetary related issues. So for ABSA, this is something that is foremost. So, to our earlier point on the strategy, there's a pillar within our strategy that talks to being an active force for good in everything that we do. And then given that we want to be an active force, we therefore cannot just be playing in the one space. So environment, is part of our humanity and our being. So we have to take care of it in the right way. That's why for us as an organization, it therefore is important to ensure that we take care of planetary requirements, in the best manner that we can.
And are there any either deals or projects that you guys get behind to bring that to reality?
Yeah. like they say, charity begins at home.
Yes.
So we can't expect others, to do good for the planet when we're not doing good. So there are initiatives we are driving internally. Part of those initiatives relate to, our own utilization of electricity
As a bank.
Yes. Now, and we are on a journey. And if you spoke about targets, we've got 2030 targets, and I would say that we've gone, halfway past, our 2030 target at this point in time, as a bank in terms of what we need to do for our own people, within the bank, but also to make sure that, our bank, our buildings, etc., are also safe for those that come into those buildings. So the second element of it becomes, the role that we play from a society point of view, in our obligations there. So given that, we've got also a target there, of sustainable finance lending of about 100 billion. And we set that target in 2020, and where we at now is we actually are about to achieve that target a year earlier than anticipated.
Yes.
And we therefore are now thinking through, what does it mean now for going forward beyond 2025? Because our original expectation was that we will meet the target in 2025, but I think we're there about there now. So
knowing you, it was the issue of not missing targets. I remember, working with you in another financial institution. Whenever you would come and budget things that you need to do, and I was like, hey, Punki is friendly, but I know she's now putting that target face on. The targets are there to be met and not missed.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Can't mess around with that.
Yeah. So we now come to the S part of the ASG. Financial inclusion is very important. We remain one of the most unequal countries in the world. Where do you see the role of banks or the role of ABSA in driving financial inclusion and leveling the playing field and allowing people more access, more businesses to have access, investment, infrastructure, these kinds of things that try and close the gap or the divide?
Yeah, so I think for me, financial inclusion is very close to my heart, because of where I come from and the opportunity that I see, financial inclusion holding for society, just in terms of closing the gap, to your point, on those in particular that are underserved. We spoke earlier on, you and I, about where we're coming from. A lot of people, lived in an unequal space, at that point in time. And I think it's been, quite apt for, those that have gone before us, to come up with the Freedom Charter.
Yes.
Where, when you look at the Freedom Charter, it speaks about maybe two key issues which talk to me.
Yes.
Firstly, it talks about redress, of previous inequalities, making sure that, there's equality that's created around people. But at the same time, it talks about, South Africa being for everyone that belongs in it. And in my mind, I think if we can get those two elements, to work, the country will work. And what's exciting, particularly when you look at it from a South Africa point of view, is that these elements also found themselves in the constitution of the country. And then given that these elements found themselves in the constitution of the country, it makes it easy, I think, for us, therefore, as banks, to respond, appropriately, so as to ensure that we bring as many people as we can, into the financial net. If you think about it, we currently are in a very, unsustainable position. You cannot have a country where 10 million people support 60 million people, just at a high level. And for me, that's what drives me every day, to say we've got to find solutions, particularly as financial institutions, to bring as many people, into the net because of the opportunity that financial services provide. So at some point in time, I was at the London School of Economics, still fairly young, and this is where I learned about how you create wealth. And to sustainably create wealth, you do have to bring people that don't have access to wealth, but you do that through provision of loans. Okay? And then people buy houses, and then over time these houses have equity, and then you can repay, that, and then you have an asset, and then through time you shift from an asset base to deposit base, so you become a depositor. So for me, the business case is quite clear, particularly for banks. It's even more clearer, for greater good of society, because it is an engine that you can use to really close the gap, between the haves and the have-nots.
You will have critics in everything you said that come from two sides. And I'll start with the one side and come to the other side. There will be a side that says this cannot work through banks or ABSA. Therefore, we should have a state bank, because it's only a state bank that can do these things that you talk about. Then there's other critics that will come and say, why are you bothering with these things? Yours is to make money so that the shareholders, right? You sit in the middle of that by being the head of strategy and sustainability. How do you respond to these and saying ABSA can do these things and still deliver shareholder value?
I'm actually smiling because generally, I think when we grow up, we get taught, in maths in particular, that there's always one solution. So if 1 + 1 is 2, so we struggle to work with polarity. Okay. And in my mind, polarity is about taking the best, of all of these worlds and creating something great in the middle of it all. So it's about finding and striking the balance. Yes, you will get things right one day. The following day, you won't get things right. For me, the most important thing is to make sure that, as you move forward, you must see that forward traction and forward momentum. So balance in all of these things are critical. It doesn't matter what you do, you always have to be balanced.
So what you're saying is, back to that earlier point about consequential decision making, you're saying paradox thinking has to be part of your makeup in order to make big decisions, because it's not short-term versus long-term, right? It's not society versus profitability. It's end, right? And you say you're comfortable in holding those, in making the right decisions.
Yeah. It's all about, managing the dilemmas every day. And that's why executives get paid.
Is to make those difficult yet consequential decisions.
Absolutely.
Right? So if we come to G of ESG, the governance piece, I know that you as ABSA has gone through some issues that relate to governance, whether it's at management level or issues at board level or exits and all of that. Again, you the head of strategy and sustainability. How do you help the organization think about issues of governance broadly?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but also a very good question at the same time, because when you think about strategy, there has to be certain critical elements that are in place. So first of all, as an organization, you need to have a purpose, the why you have to exist. And then from a purpose, you need to have a vision. So, which direction are we're going. And then from there, you need to start crafting a view as to, for you to achieve that vision, what are those values that you need to have in place, which will help guide, as you move along the way. So in my mind, the exciting opportunity for ABSA, as I said, we've had the opportunity to build ground up the strategy. And then through that, we came up with, our own purpose statement, which is about empowering Africa's tomorrow together, one story at a time. That's why your story matters, campaign that you see in the billboards outside. So coming back, I think, to your question, it boils down to values, and values always get tested in some manner, shape, or form, whether be it an individual or at an organization level. I think for me, the gift for ABSA was that our values, yes, have been tested, and we've had to learn through the process. So there's learnings that we are taking from here, which are actually helping us to be even a much more resilient organization as we go forward. Because in life, we all falter.
Yeah, there's always going to be a challenge somewhere.
Somewhere there'll be a challenge.
So your point is, what are we learning from?
Absolutely.
Rather than the drama of what has happened, it's what are the lessons?
It's what are the lessons, and also how do you respond differently as you go forward? If you think about the world and where we come in, ESG was not something that was embraced. It was always about the profit, so it's risk, it's reward. But now, when you look at where the world is at, we've learned a lot, and we've started to see what is the impact element. So, it's an evolutionary process. And also, I think from an ABSA point of view, we're evolving, and sometimes it's tough. We learn some difficult lessons, but you take those lessons and you say, what do I do differently as I move forward?
One of the things that those who know you, like me and others, know that through a storm, there are leaders who are calm and can navigate the storm. There are leaders who are drama, and everybody knows there's a storm, right? What keeps you this grounded through all the ups and downs? I used to joke that I've never seen you flustered, right? What keeps you through all of those things just calm, and what's the value of calmness for leaders?
Certainly, calmness is a strength, particularly at a leadership level, because you don't want to fluster people. But secondly, for me, is I try and stay connected with myself, because I can only control myself. I can't control what happens around me. And to do that effectively, I carry into conversations an open mind. At the same time is an open heart. So don't be invested in your own outcomes. And then finally, it's an open gut. So, the three have to integrate. But over and above it all, I think there is also that spiritual side of things, that, as you think about decisions, don't make, personality or personal based decisions, but make your decisions be informed by something bigger than yourself, which for me is that spiritual side. And, to nurture it, there's mindfulness, so those are, systems that I tap into to a large extent, just to make sure that I can stay grounded, all the time. So these four factors, someone talks about the four capitals, of humanity. For me, these are the four capitals that I tap into all the time, and they help me to stay grounded, and also be as objective, to situations as I possibly can. Because also one thing, Lincoln, that's important is that we have to remember that, if you personalize issues, to make you sick. Some people are sick because they tend to make issues personal.
Yes.
But if you think through issues in a manner that's almost divorced.
Yes. Dispassionate.
Yes.
Rational.
Yes.
Data-driven.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Absolutely. And then you make the right call. One of the things that I also learned, through one of the development programs within ABSA, is this concept of emotional detachment. It's so important, especially at this level, for you to be emotionally detached, but make the right decisions, for the greater good of the organization. And also, interestingly, the other concept that I tend to work with is that, no decision is wrong or right. You just have to make a decision, but on the back of that, make that decision right.
Yes. Yes. We live in a world of social media. And what you're saying is that as a leader, you can't be making social media decisions. You've got to make decisions. Social media will do what it does, right? People will talk, but you got to be comfortable that you've come to the right decision, and as you say, make it right.
Absolutely. And it must be data-led.
Yes.
There's so much data that's available out there, and artificial intelligence is also making things a lot more easier for us, from a data points perspective. So you've got to allow data, to help you to make the right calls. I always joke around in the office also about the issue of data.
Yes.
Particularly strategy, to say strategy, starts where data ends.
Yes.
And data ends where strategy starts.
I know. I'm reminded by a guy we both used to work for, called Sim Chabalala, who used to say, in data we trust. So I don't know, you would say, in God we trust, everybody else bring data. In making these decisions, so that they're not gut-based decisions or based on who's more popular or shouts the loudest, but what does the data tell us? If I look at the competitive environment, there are fintechs, there are telcos, there are retailers, they are all coming for your lunch. They are all coming to the table. And on the menu is ABSA's lunch and other banks' lunch. How does ABSA respond to the competitive environment out there?
Do you think that's necessarily a bad thing?
Yes, tell me.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, I really think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it keeps all of us on our toes.
Sharpens.
Yes, sharpens up the pencils.
Yes.
And I think if I think about it, you go back a couple of years where you just had the big four banks.
Yes.
They could do what they wanted to do at any given moment. But now, if you look at how the world has evolved, with the intensifying competition, and in particular here in South Africa, particularly from the neobanks, they actually are helping the bigger banks or the big four to dig deep, and come up with solutions that are cost-effective, for general people out there. So for me, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it does force, the big four, to really think deep and innovate. And I think as we innovate, we also help in society to move forward. So from that point of view, I actually welcome, the competition that comes from the fintechs and the competition that comes from, other banks, because it's the only way that we as a society ultimately can benefit through ensuring that, there's that healthy competition that continues to move society forward.
There's a young lady who is in high school, who's thinking of studying accountancy and all of this. And they're in a village or they're in a township. Do they dare to dream that one day they will be sitting at the top of a bank, like where you're sitting today?
I think there's hope. my sense is we stand for that, Lincoln. We've demonstrated that it can be done, it's possible. I mean, one comes from a very humble background, but we've managed to push through barriers which are difficult in some instances, but we've laid the foundation. So one of the, my inspirational big role models is Charlotte Manchester.
Yes.
And if I read about her history
in those 1800s,
in those times,
getting a degree,
yes,
from overseas,
first black woman overseas,
apartheid
and all. So she's just gone through those levels. So she's paved the way for some of us to follow. And I think as we follow, we are also paving the way for the next generation to come. And so they need to just take on the opportunity, work with it. They will get there as well. It's possible.
After a long, hard day at ABSA, making big, consequential decisions, you get home. Who's there at home? Who's the family? How do they relate to you there?
Yeah. Maybe before I go there, one thing I just thought about as we're talking now about being a CA, it just reminded me of the time when I was at university.
Yes.
So I was at Wits, very difficult, but ultimately managed to complete the degree. We used to study late at night, etc. So the other day I went there and I was walking around campus and I saw these youngsters.
Yes.
I'm looking at them, I'm like, okay, why aren't they having fun? They look like they're too serious. Then I remember that actually this is where I lost my fun side.
That's the reality. That's the reality.
Yeah, but I would encourage them not to lose their
you must
side.
have a bit of fun and study.
And study at the same
Great
time.
stuff.
Yeah,
Great
absolutely.
Stuff.
Yeah, and I think, home, I've got 3 kids.
Yes.
So 2 boys and a girl.
What are their ages?
My eldest son is 35 now.
Yes.
And then daughter 25, and my youngest man is 19. He keeps me on my toes.
Yes. Challenges.
Yes, that's why I'm looking so young.
Yes.
Because we dance together.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think those are the things, really, to be quite honest, that center me and give me balance, as well. Because sometimes, I'll be trying to open up my computer, working, and he'll be saying, it's time for the 2 of us.
Let's chat.
Yes, let's chat. So for me, I think those are the things that really ground me and balance me. And I spoke a lot about balance. So it's very important to always make sure that you get the balance right. And balance is not about 50-50, but it's about presence. No.
Sometimes
it's not like
this one, sometimes it's down. Yeah, it's not like
it goes
depending
like
on the circumstances.
Yes.
Right.
And it's about presence. You have to show up for the people around you at that specific moment in time. Make it count, and ensure that when you leave, they can still remember what you left. The kind of energy you left at that spot when you are with them. So for me, it's all about that. So wherever I'm at, whatever circumstances I'm around, make it count. Then what people think.
If I go back exactly to that, sometimes corporates, and mainly us as men, give women these false choices to either be a wonderful exec or a wonderful wife, a wonderful mother or a wonderful board member, a wonderful community member and a wonderful entrepreneur or a wonderful entrepreneur. You say, hey, no, hold on. Those are my choices. I'll make them as I want to. How I show up is my choice. Right?
Absolutely.
Talk to young ladies about that.
Yeah, it's exactly that, Lincoln. Remember I said, we are all leaders. in our own right, and leadership comes from within. And so you need to know who you are, master yourself, and don't let other people tell you who you are. You need to determine for yourself, who you are, because if you know that, you will live your calling. So that's what's important. It's all about, are you living your own calling, or are you living someone else's calling? And I can tell you, living someone else's calling is tiring. It's tiring.
This mask, that mask,
Yes,
that mask.
No.
It's like, be who you are.
Be who you are.
And self-acceptance is so important.
Absolutely. Occupy the spaces that you're in. Using the gifts that you've been given. It's easier, to work with your own gifts than to try and work, with what you're seeing in the environment. You're trying to borrow what people are doing. It doesn't work.
Hobbies. So people don't know you. If I say movie type, what type of movies would you like to watch? If you like movies at all.
I don't like movies.
Yeah, you're accountants. Yes.
Actually, my son, the eldest one.
Yes.
He's in LA.
Yes.
So he's doing movies, and so they are doing a Michael Jackson biopic.
Wow.
So I'm looking forward to watching that. But I'm not a movie person.
You're not a movie person. And music?
I love music. I love music.
Types of music?
You're not gonna believe.
Yeah. Don't say come.
No, it's not come.
My piano? No.
I do listen to my piano, but no, I honestly, there's this one band that's close to my heart.
Yes. Brilliant.
Yeah, so
Brilliant.
I listen to a lot of that genre of music, but also gospel music, because I find it soothing for the soul.
Yes. Holiday types? You like to go with the family or just you and your person?
Me and my man.
That's it. These others must sort themselves out. Yeah, they are old enough now.
Yes, they are old enough.
Yeah.
To sort themselves
It's just
out.
me, you and your person.
Yes.
Right? Not with...
Not with anyone else.
So if, just as I conclude, if young people at ABSA are thinking of their future, are thinking of the future of the bank, what did you say to them? What's out there for ABSA? You are the person who's in charge of the strategy, and you have to make sure that ABSA is sustainable. Right? Is there a future at ABSA for them? Is there a future for ABSA at all?
The prospects for ABSA are great.
Yes.
Okay, I would remind them that we've got a strong ambition of being a Pan-African organization that's leading, and I can see that vision. And I think the other important thing is that we've got very beautiful people at ABSA, very passionate people at ABSA, and they've got their purpose in place, which is a thing that rallies them every day, and that's what they need to look to, when it gets tough, but also when it's great, they need to look at their purpose, which is really to empower those clients out there and make sure that they succeed.
The young people would say, oh, when you said you have these beautiful people, and this is what sometimes I don't get with leaders who think they can be in leadership but they don't love people. I'm like, how? How could you ever lead what you don't love and are passionate about?
Yeah, we certainly are beautiful people. I can say that with pride, and also we're very proud.
Yes.
To be part of ABSA. A lot of them, they'll tell you their blood is truly red.
Yes. They inside can criticize ABSA, but not somebody outside criticize ABSA. Then the war is on.
Yes.
So I want to say a huge thank you. Thank you for a wonderful conversation. For me, in this platform, I want people to see and feel leaders, get to know them at a personal level, but also hear their perspectives. And I think you've given us both of them.